Hi, my name is Agna, and today we will be doing ISO SAE 21434 Clause 8 overview. And Clause 8 talks about continual cybersecurity activities. So I would first like to draw your attention to the definition of continual cybersecurity activities. So these are activities that are performed throughout all phases of the lifecycle. Now, this part will be explored in more depth in the upcoming sections in the deep dive available in VSEC. Now, if we continue to scope and objectives, I would like to once again draw your attention at the definition section. So first of all, a vulnerability is a weakness that can be exploited as part of an attack path. And once again, an attack path is like a step-by-step explanation of how a vulnerability can be exploited. Now, if we take a closer look at scope, it is mentioned that continual cybersecurity activities are performed during all the phases of the lifecycle and can be done outside of a specific project. Now, if we take a look at objectives for Clause 8, it is mentioned that the goal is to identify and manage cybersecurity vulnerabilities and events. And if we lastly take a look at main activities, in this case we have four. The first one is cybersecurity monitoring, followed by cybersecurity event evaluation, vulnerability analysis, and lastly we have vulnerability management. So in the upcoming sections available in the deep dive, we will be covering how these main activities are performed, how they tie into the objective of Clause 8, and how these activities can be performed throughout the lifecycle. Now let's take a look at key concepts. So first of all, we have 8 provisions, and it's also very important to note here that all provisions in Clause 8 are requirements. If you remember, apart from requirements, we also have recommendations and permissions. In this case, requirements are the highest form out of all three. So if you take a closer look again at the overview of ISO SAE 21434, we once again have the previously mentioned 4 activities shown here, such as cybersecurity monitoring, cybersecurity event evaluation, vulnerability analysis, and vulnerability management. But to not confuse activities with work products, which we have 6, and the first one is sources for cybersecurity information, triggers, cybersecurity events, weaknesses from cybersecurity events, vulnerability analysis, and lastly, evidence of managed vulnerabilities. So now let's go through all of the work products and discuss what they mean exactly. So the first one, source for cybersecurity information, this stands for documents containing internal or external sources for collecting cybersecurity related information. Next one is triggers. So these are keywords, reference for configuration information, names of components or suppliers. The third one that we have here is cybersecurity events. So this one stands for cybersecurity information that is relevant for an item or component. Then we have weaknesses from cybersecurity events. So these are collected cybersecurity information relative to an item or component, which will be reviewed to identify applicable weakness. Then we have vulnerability analysis. So this is systematic identification and evaluation of vulnerabilities. Lastly, we have evidence of managed vulnerability. So this stands for proof that a vulnerability was either remediated or accepted. In terms of vulnerabilities being remediated or accepted, we will explore this once again in more depth in deep dive. We'll also be discussing what is vulnerability analysis, what are cybersecurity events, and so on. Now let's take a look at implementation of Clause 8. So first of all, we have to consider some requirements. So for example, we have teams and our departments often responsible that include product cybersecurity, red team, blue team, and management, in other words, CISO. Then let's take a look at the challenges. So in terms of challenges, we have mentioned cross collaboration between various teams, keeping up to date with latest threats, and a high level of expertise. So why are these considered challenges? So first of all, having a high level of expertise is pretty much required to achieve all of the activities such as cybersecurity monitoring, vulnerability analysis, and so on. If we want these to be done effectively, we have to have people who are experts in this field to have good results. Then we also have mentioned keeping up to date with latest threats. So This means that, for example, if we are doing vulnerability analysis or monitoring, we have to be up to date with what's happening in the world so that we are not left behind, so that some of the new vulnerabilities that are out there are not. Then we have, once again, cross collaboration between various teams. So this means that, for example, we have to have people from the red team, blue team, product security, and even the chief information security officer having to work together, which may be hard to organize and hard to have effective collaboration. We'll be providing solutions to some of these challenges later on in the deep dive section. Now let's take a look at risks. So the first risk is if a vulnerability is overlooked, it can have a financial, safety, operational, and privacy impact. So in other words, in terms of having a financial impact, this means that there can be a huge monetary loss. In terms of safety, it means that if we overlook a major vulnerability and it affects how a vehicle is driven, then we can have potential safety impacts. If we take a look at the operational impact, so for example, if we overlook a vulnerability that is responsible for some functionality in the vehicle, this means that the functionality won't be operating as it should, meaning that there will be some kind of operational damage. And in terms of privacy impact, it means that, for example, if we look another vulnerability that is related to how information is stored in a vehicle, then it can be a potential privacy impact and we could have personally identifiable information exposed. Another thing is financial damage that makes it impossible or very difficult to recover. So this means that if there is a major vulnerability overlooked that has a substantial effect, and if the effect is very widely spread, then it could mean that the damage could be very severe and it would be potentially very difficult to recover for the company financially. And another thing that's often overlooked is damage to reputation. This is something that can also take time to recover. We have briefly covered the following things, such as work products, activities performed in Clause 8. We have looked at the scope, we have discussed some of the challenges, and we have presented some of the risks. Now let's once again take a look at the provisions and work products tables. So here we have made an outline for you of how the work products tie in with some of the activities and provisions altogether. So here we have work products from 1 to 3, which are sources for cybersecurity information, triggers, and cybersecurity events. So the provisions that we have here are: the first one is select sources for collection of cybersecurity information, define and maintain triggers for the triage of cybersecurity information, collect and triage cybersecurity information to determine if the cybersecurity information becomes one or more cybersecurity events. Then if we take a look at work product 4, which is weaknesses from cybersecurity events. So we have only one provision for this work product, which is evaluate a cybersecurity event to identify weaknesses in an item and or component. If we take a look at work product number 5, we have two provisions, which are analyze weaknesses to identify vulnerabilities and provide a rationale for a weakness not identified as a vulnerability. Then lastly, we have work product 6, which is evidence of managed vulnerabilities. So we have requirement 7, which says manage vulnerabilities, and requirement 8 states apply 13.3 if a risk treatment decision in accordance with 15.9, which is described in the section speaking about TARA, necessitates cybersecurity incident response. So all of these requirements will be analyzed in more depth in the following sections in deep dive. Thank you for being with us.
If you are not yet on VSEC, please go to vsec.blockharbor.io. Not only will you find more automotive cybersecurity training content, but there's also real vehicle test benches you can access remotely, automotive cybersecurity capture the flag challenges, automated testing tools, and more. Thank you for your time.